you're going to have to dig into the memory banks to get the answer to my very first question, which is straight off the bat: what Puma collaboration do these guys remind me of? And if you can answer that question, I'll be absolutely impressed if you can dig that out of the archives. And we're talking, I think it was a 2018 shoe, so 3 years ago, to try and get what I'm thinking about, the connection I'm making between these guys and a Puma collaboration, or Puma if you're that way inclined, a Puma collaboration from 3-4 years ago. So try and get that in your thoughts. And also we get into that one thing about these guys, and there's just one thing about these guys that I wish they had done differently. So we'll be getting into all of that today as we take a close-up look at the Nike Dunk Low Disrupt Copa. This is the Tokyo Bara 23 Sneaker Channel. Tokyo Bara 23 Sneaker Channelです。毎日アップするので、毎日見てください。Every single day. From Tokyo, Japan, I bring you content about upcoming sneaker releases, sneaker news, and sneaker reviews. And today what we've got in the spotlight is the Nike Dunk Low Disrupt Copa. So there's 3 different things to look at in there. Nike Dunk Low is one part of that, Disrupt is another, and then Copa is another part of that. And I asked that question at the top of this video about what is the one thing about these shoes that I really wish wasn't the way it was. And I'm serious about this. If this one detail was different, these guys would be really hot and people would be all over themselves to get them. But I think because of one detail, people are just like, nah, why are you doing that? And then also that collaboration with Puma. So first things first, the one detail that I wish was different is I wish these weren't called dunks. If they had called this anything else, if they just called this line, I know it's not just this Copa, but there's a whole line of Nike Dunk Low Disrupt. If they just called it like the Nike Disrupt, you know what I mean? And just called it that, I think a lot of people would have loved this shoe. I think it's a very cool looking shoe. But the problem is that Dunk has a whole lot of history, has a whole lot of story behind it. And when you play with one of the classics, you better get it right. And this to me isn't, it's not close enough to the classic of a dunk. So by calling it a dunk, they actually do it a disservice. If you honestly look at this Disrupt shoe, any Disrupt shoe, for what it is, not for what it's called, but for what it is, you'd be like, that's a pretty cool looking shoe. Interesting design, very cool, kind of Nike. Yeah, I think that's very cool. But as soon as they put Dunk on it, they actually changed the whole destiny of the shoe, and they shouldn't have done that. They should have just called it the Nike Disrupt, and then whatever the colorways are. And the colorways are today, it's the Copa that we're after. So tell me if you agree with me about whether you think this is a nice looking shoe, regardless of its name, and if you think it shouldn't have been called a Dunk, if they should have called it something else. But let's get into the second thing that I was saying before we actually look at the details on the shoe, and there's a lot to look at on this shoe, trust me. But the second thing that I was talking about was what's the collaboration. I don't know if any of you will have got this, but this is what I'm talking about here. Doing, there is a Puma suede collaboration with the do we want to go with Jewelers? Maybe we want to go with Jewelers. Swarovski. And that collaboration was from 2018. It's actually one of the first videos I did for YouTube. And as soon as I saw these guys, I was just reminded of those guys. And it's to do with the jade color that you get on this shoe today. I know it's called Copa, but I'm going to call it jade. And that feel is very much a Swarovski feel. And then on top of that, here's the Dubray or lace lock, whichever way you want to look at that, which only seems to be on the left shoe and doesn't seem to be on the right shoe. And obviously with this sort of crystal, and that's why I call this the crystal clear video, and the crystal feel and that diamond feel to that lace lock or that Dubray on the left shoe there, and then the sort of jade tone of the shoe just reminds me of Swarovski and back to those Puma suedes from 2018. So that's where I was going with that, and maybe someone out there was able to make that random connection just like I did and tell me all about that in the comments down below. So that's the 2 main things that I wanted to ask at the start of this video before we get into the actual details of the shoe. Was the one thing that they just, they just didn't need to call it a dunk, you know what I mean? Could have called it anything else, and it would have just been an amazing shoe that people would have been like all over. And then the thing that it reminds me of is the Puma suede Swarovskis. So right, let's get into the shoe and have a look at some of the details on it, because there's a lot going on in this shoe that's worth talking about. And I personally think it's a really nice looking shoe, like I said, but just that dunk thing there always gets me. Now, one of the things I really dig about this shoe is the swooshes and their placement on the side and how they slide underneath the sort of ankle support. So you've got a very solid black swoosh, and imagine if that solid black swoosh had run all the way across the side of the shoe and over the top of that ankle support, it would have been a bit too much. But because it rides under it, that ankle support just dilutes it a little bit. And even though the swoosh is slightly oversized and black, because it slips under the ankle support there, it sort of takes a little bit of the sort of power off of it, and it fits the shoe really nicely. So it's one of the choices I really dig about this shoe. I totally agree with. Another choice is I like how toned down and laid back the tongues are. Very, very simple tongues on these guys, nothing major jumping off. It's hard to see from the front angle, but there might be another angle that I can show you on the green screen where you can see the unfinished feel of the tongues on there and how they haven't finished the stitching around the edge, which is not uncommon in things like blazers and off-white branded shoes and things like that. So that unfinished tongue around the edge of these guys is a detail which we all like to see. And then my favorite part of these shoes, my absolute number one favorite part of these shoes, is to go to the back end and look at the heel. So right here is a look at the heel. Now I think there's three things about that I really like. I mean, just in general, it's a nice looking thing, but specific details about that big pull tab on the back. Number one is it's in silver, which goes with that motif of that kind of bling kind of luxe feel to the lace lock on the front, and then on the back, these guys having silver on there is one element of that. The second element is the standing or vertical swoosh that's debossed into the materials on here is very nice, and there's a lot of ways to brand a shoe, and with the name of the shoe, with words, with letters, with shortened, AF1, for example, Air Force One. But in the case of these guys, just going with a swoosh on the back instead of something like Nike or that, I actually totally agree with. And then finally, about that pull tab on the back, it appears to be, and again, hopefully the green screen's holding up to show you this, it appears to be in tumbled leather, which is another excellent detail to add to the back end of the shoe. So very cool as far as I'm concerned on that. And the only thing that comes close to being as cool as that to me is this right here. There's the outsole on these guys. Now I'm going for maybe 50% micro translucent, because these are just about translucent, just about icy blue translucence, and that's one of the things I always like that in a shoe. I like to see some icy blue translucent outsoles on shoes, and these guys just about have it. It's not that clear kind of crystal translucence. There's a semi-translucence about it, but it still has that. But what it also has, and this is a part of the disrupt line, is you can see that the outsole has been fragmented in a lot of different ways, so it's not quite as smooth as you normally see on a shoe, and you can get a real sense of the sort of sticky outy bits, for want of a better word, on the edge that run along the midsole of these guys. So looking at the outline of the outsole, you can see the kind of jagged edge around the outline there. And then if we come back to the lateral side, especially when you look at the pair, instead of just looking at the lateral side, but the pair is slightly on an angle, so you get an idea down the midsole of that sort of chunky kind of bit that pokes out and comes back in again, which is reflected on the outsole down below. So that kind of design element on these guys, coming back out, having a look at the full shoe, that kind of design element on these guys is standard for the Disrupt line all across the colorways. And but in the case of these guys, because of that translucent outsole, you get a real sense of it in a different way than you normally would because of the colorway. So the design, the structure of the shoe is very much the Nike Dunk Low Disrupt, but then you've got some additions to it because of that colorway, the translucent outsole, and silver on the pull tab on the back, and definitely that bling bit of gemmery on the lace lock or the doubrays, whichever way you want to call these guys. So all in all, great looking shoe. It's a women's shoe, so this Disrupt line is a women's shoe, just like over at the Air Force One is it the Shadow line over at the Air Force One that's for women, and then this one, and I've been all around the houses on women's shoes and men's shoes, and I've made very clear that I just wish they'd make shoes, and then whoever wants to buy them can wear them. So if a guy wants to wear these, fill your boots. If a girl wants to wear them, over to you. It doesn't need to be designated men's or women's shoes, I don't think so. But it is a women's shoe. It's not my choice to designate it that way. That's how Nike do it. But it's like I say, so to me, a great looking shoe, a great looking silhouette, but just because they call it dunks, it's going to get all kinds of flack because people will not appreciate taking one of the OGs, one of the classic silhouettes, and changing it and updating it in this particular way. So, which is a shame because it's a great looking shoe. Okay, it's time for me to sign off, and thank you guys for checking out the content. It's pretty late at night here on Sunday, and this is Wednesday's video, so I'm a little bit ahead of the curve, but not as far ahead of the curve as I like to be. But you know what? We're doing our best to churn out this daily content, and because I'm churning out daily content, it means at the end of every single video, I get to say to you the same thing every single day. That I do this every single day, and that means that you are guaranteed to see me tomorrow.